Right.
Okay, so let's get started. First of all, I wanted to make sure you're in the right presentation. We're going to talk about our analytics platform and how we could leverage it to improve constituent outreach. All right. Okay, we're going to have to figure this down. Already I broke the technology. So, okay. Now I am clicking the down arrow.
Other people are having similar issues.
Yeah, they have the same. Oh, okay. Let's see. Let me get focus. There we go.
Yeah.
And it lost focus.
What did you press?
I just got focus on the screen and
Oh,
just
I
clicked
see.
any
Okay.
button.
All right.
Okay, so let's begin with the introduction. So alphabetically, Aniket, why don't you get started?
Yes, my name is Aniket Majumdar. I work for the Strategic Insights and Planning team, which is part of the ASU Enterprise Partners. I lead the data science team under assignment.
And I'm Jay Patel. I'm also with Enterprise Partners. Specifically, I'm the Senior Director over Data Engineering within Technology and Solutions. I report directly to the CTO, Stephanie Leach, who happens to be right there. I'm relatively new to the organization. I've been with the ASU Enterprise Partners for about 1.5 years. But as you can see, I've been doing IT for almost 3 decades now, right? So with that, let's just get into our presentation. Hopefully the technology still works.
You may want to add Supratim's name. He's also part of the presentation. He's actually in India right now, so he couldn't be here physically.
Yeah.
But he's part of my team, so he's a data science specialist who helped us also with the content.
Yeah, okay, very good. So what's the agenda today? Very short and simple. If you know us, we like to keep things simple. So I'll go over the vision, right? The reason why we built what we built. I'll go over the architecture. What is it that we built? And then Aniket's actually going to go through some use cases, right? Show you exactly how we're leveraging the platform that was built. So first, let's start with what is ASU Enterprise Partners, right? So first and foremost, we are a private nonprofit company. Come on in.
Still working, yes.
Yes, so we're a private nonprofit company. We're not a part of ASU, right? A lot of people think we're ASU, but we're really not a part of ASU. We are a partner to ASU. Now, we have one mission in life, and our mission is to create resources for ASU and to advance the ASU charter. Right? It's very hard to tell us apart from ASU. We behave very much like ASU, both culturally and tactically, right? So my employee badge looks exactly like your employee badge, and you are an ASU employee, right? We use many of the same systems as ASU. A lot of the training that's required, for example, inclusion and diversity, we take the same training. And in fact, President Crow, he sits in our building. He's the floor below us, right? Now, an important distinction about us being private is that our data is also private, right? We are not bound by any public records request, right? Why would we be? We're a private entity. Keeping our data private is core to who we are, right? It's a reason for being, right? So like in French, you say, that's all that, right? That's why we exist. And it's instilled in our DNA. Everything we do and anything we do starts with protecting our data, right? That's fundamental, including the initiative we're going to talk about. Just to wrap up on this slide, I have a picture of our building. We're at the corner of College and University. So the next time you're walking by or driving by the building and you're wondering who lives in there, now you know, right? So good. Okay, so let's start with our vision, right? So overarching, what is it that we want to do? We want better strategy-based constituent interactions across all enterprises by leveraging data science. Really, that's it. Real simple. So I mentioned data science, right? What's the need or what's the requirement for data science? Basically, data science gets the right message to the right people at the right time. An all enterprise data science model satisfies basically all initiatives, all strategies but it's very targeted on the outreach, right? So it's not a shotgun method where everybody sends communication or performs outreach with everybody out there, right? It's targeted and it only engages with those constituents, those individuals that are warm to the strategy, right? You may not want to be contacted by ASU, or you just want to know about certain things, or you're interested in certain initiatives, not everything, right? So data science lets us do that. And what are the benefits of that? So first and foremost, it avoids constituent fatigue, right? The last thing you want is 6 emails a day from ASU, especially when you don't want any emails from ASU, right? At best, it's the same information. At worst, it's conflicting information. So using science to have targeted outreach interactions with your constituents, right, avoids what's known as disenfranchising those constituents, right? Only reach out to them when they're prime and only if they want to be reached out to. And if they are being reached out to, make sure it's pertinent and relevant to their interests and their likes. So let's go a little bit deeper into achieving our vision, right? So the units and enterprises within ASU, within the ASU ecosystem, they own the strategy, right? They basically define it, and ultimately they are responsible for the success of that strategy. What the units and enterprises do is they leverage what's known as the constituent hub. What does the constituent hub get you, or get them, right? So a couple of things. First of all, it gives them creative expertise. Another thing it gets them is expertise in digital marketing. And then the other thing, it provides analytics and data, which is near and dear to me, right? So those 3 things. A core part of the constituent hub is this concept of a central identity system. And basically what the CIS does, it's a single view into you, right? You or your data may be across multiple systems, but there needs to be a way where we could identify you as being the same person, right? And that's what CIS does. How does it do that? Pretty simple. It leverages an enterprise key, and that enterprise key is generated from a master data management system. So once the constituent hub performs its magic, it renders a campaign that the units and the enterprises can execute on. And that campaign is very precise. It's very, very targeted. As we go through the presentation, Aniket's going to go a little bit deeper into the gold circle. So really the so what of this slide is number 2. And in summary, what does number 2 get you? It gets you a whole bunch of marketing capabilities, and it gets you insights and analytics using data science. Now, to achieve number 2, right, to achieve the vision, you need a platform, right? You need something, and that's what we built, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. So what did we build? We built something called Marketing Data and Analytics Platform, also known as MDAP. What does it do? It's basically a system that brings data, compute, analytics, reporting, and marketing together in one place. It leverages AWS technology. So that's MDAP. So when we started building MDAP, we had some key objectives, right? So really 3 areas. First is we wanted to provide a new home for marketing data in a common place and format. We also wanted a system that allowed access, and I'm very deliberate when I use the word access, because we do not copy data, right? That's a big no-no for us, where when we interact with the system, we don't want to just copy all of their data. We want to access data, not copy it, right? And so we wanted a system where we could access data that's loosely coupled, and then munch that data together to derive insights, right? So data, when combined with other data, becomes more powerful. The other thing we wanted to do was basically provide an environment for Aniket and his team, right? A place where the analysts and data scientists have access to a compute environment that's scalable, and it's also affordable, right? We didn't want Aniket and team every time they had an initiative or something to work on, to worry about, okay, now I'm going to spend 80% of my time trying to figure out data, where to get it, how to curate it, how to use it, things of that sort. No, that wasn't the intent. So basically, by keeping data sciences in mind as part of the design, we decreased significantly data preparation time by eliminating all the manual stuff that team would have had to do to be productive. And then it also allows us to achieve automation. And the third part of this is, of course, you have access to all this data. Why wouldn't you want to derive some insights, maybe build some visualizations, some dashboards, and some reports? And we do just that. So I have, for illustrative purposes only, a dashboard. This is basically Thrive magazine subscriptions by zip code, right? And as you can see from the picture there, we have the capability to provide rich content. So who's the MDAP audience, right? So the obvious, the analysts, data scientists, leadership, marketeers, and then entities within ASU, right? The enterprises or the units. But look, really, I could replace this list with anybody and everybody within the ASU ecosystem, right? How we all interact with the platform is very different. When I log in as a system platform administrator. When some of my peers log in, they log in as data scientists. Very different experience. The example I like to give is President Crow actually interacts with their platform. Every time he wants to look at how Sun Devil Awards is doing, we have a very nice dashboard. He, in essence, is interacting with the platform, right? So one of the design criteria is build a platform that anybody within the ASU ecosystem can use, right? From somebody that's very senior like President Crow to basically the administrator of the platform, me. All right, so what exactly is MDAP, right? You may have inferred from 2 slides ago, it's nothing but a data lake, right? I know you hear about all these fancy technologies, there's companies built around it, right? Snowflake. Look, at the end of the day, it's a simple data lake. And that's by choice, right? We wanted to keep things simple. And like every data lake, we have the ability to ingest data, both batch and real time. All data lakes have a very prominent storage component like we do. And then of course, our users, machine learning, visualizations, report writers, different applications and such. What's the true intent of this slide? It's really to look at the key points, right? So first and foremost, we do not copy data. We access data and then we use that data logically. We do not copy it. The only thing we do persist are the results and the calculations, which is a very small footprint. The other thing is the platform is technology agnostic. We don't care what technology you're using, right? You can play on our platform. All you need is a connector. And trust me, there is a connector for your technology. I have yet to come across a technology, including mainframe, believe it or not, where there isn't a connector, right? And then we're multiple cloud aware, right? More often than not, people think about, hey, we got to converge to one cloud, but the world doesn't work that way, right? Different people, different entities use different cloud solutions, right? I can't ask ASU to use a certain cloud. They're like, really, Jay, who are you, right? And what if there's a reorg and I inherit a cloud, which is what happened, right? I'm inheriting a new technology. So we're cloud agnostic. Right now, we leverage 3 cloud solutions, AWS. So, our technology is built on AWS, but we also use the ASU data warehouse, which is built on Redshift. We have an Azure cloud, which is us. ASU Enterprise Partners has a very mature, prominent cloud built all on Microsoft technologies. And then we also interact with Google Cloud. So there's parts of ASU that use Google as their solution, right? So we're multiple cloud. Some of the data sources that we're interacting with currently and in the near future. So both clouds, ASU and the ASU EP cloud. Both marketing clouds, right, built on Salesforce, the enterprise marketing solution, and then the advanced solution. We're the owners of the advanced system. The other thing is behavioral data, so think Telium, and then that you can infer Google Cloud from that. CRM data, both from an enterprise CRM perspective, Frank Monteria, and then advanced Nayeli, who happens to be there, right? So Salesforce technologies, and then a really important component is survey data. And when Aniket goes through his part of the presentation, he's actually going to show how him and his team leverage these data sources. All right, so why AWS cloud, right? So I think it was worth devoting a whole slide to this because that's the number one question I get, right? Jay, why AWS? You're ASUP, you guys are a Microsoft shop, right? So for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, by using AWS, we could leverage all the vast resources available to us from ASU, right? ASU has AWS. At the end of the day, 95% of our data is going to be ASU data, right? So why not leverage all those resources, right? All those people, all those programs, processes. The other thing with AWS, it's very feature rich. Last time I counted, it was about 200 different services. And every week I get an email from Amazon where, hey, do you want to be part of a beta group? We're testing out a new service, right? So very feature rich. The other thing is they're a leader when it comes to cloud computing. If you look at Gartner's Magic Quadrant, right, they're up at the top. So are the other two that we interact with, Microsoft, Azure, and then the Google Cloud offerings, right? So they're an industry standard. That's what we do them. And then pragmatically, at the end of the day, ASU EP inherited this system. It was built under the ASU umbrella. And of course, ASU is going to build on AWS, right? And so this goes back to what I was saying previously. We have to be multiple cloud agnostic because we just don't know what cloud we're going to be working with. All right, and so this is my favorite slide, and you'll be able to tell from my body language, this is the space I like to play in. In fact, when I put this presentation together, this was the first slide I put together, right? So a couple of key concepts here. If you look to your left, we have something known as infrastructure as code. So everything we do is codified, right? Be it granting access to someone, creating a dashboard, giving Aniket and team compute power, it's all code. Trust me, it's very, very tempting when you have a request to do something to just jump into the component and do it because they make it really easy, right? But you have to have discipline, right? You say, no, don't do that. I know you can do it in a minute, but take the time to codify it. Now, why do you want to codify it, right, in the first place? So a couple of scenarios. Let's say, for example, that everything to the right of that infrastructure as code block gets blown away, right? That's a bad day, but it's not the end of the world. We could easily recreate everything there through our code, right? It's not lost forever. We could easily do that. Another thing using code, infrastructure as code, is if I wanted to take everything we build and move it to another AWS account. So we're using a very specific AWS account. And let's say I wanted to move it to another account, or we get a requirement where I needed a sandbox. I could easily just recreate everything from the code, right down to, hey, Joe Smith has a very special permission on this component, right? It's in code. If it was not in code, trust me, I would forget about it, right? And then there's a whole exercise of, but I had access to this, what happened? That's all gone. Another powerful thing about infrastructure as code is you can see we're leveraging Azure DevOps as our code repository. We could build pipelines. So all of a sudden, we have a continuous delivery, continuous integration, CDCI capability. So that's why I'm a firm believer in infrastructure as code. The first thing that happened when I took ownership of this platform is I built out this component here because really that's our IP, that's our intellectual property. Everything else, I mean, it's easy, but really what's the value, what's the money? It's what's in the infrastructure as code, right? So task number one, Jay, get that up and running. Then I'm going to briefly just go through some of the components, starting with the middle. We leverage AWS Lake Formation. So everything is permissed, and yes, that's a real word. Everything is permissed through Lake Formation. Lake Formation has a very, very prominent storage component known as S3, right? So basically, that's the heart of it. You may not know it, Aniket, but when you are interacting with the platform, you're really interacting with the S3 component. Yes. The other thing we have is Amazon Athena, and that lets us query S3, right? So guys like me that grew up writing T-SQL and ANSI SQL against a relational database, this makes this platform very, very familiar, right? I'm interacting with S3 no different than I'm interacting with the SQL Server database, right? So it's very, very, very familiar and comforting, trust me, right? It just abstracts all the complexity of S3. At the bottom, and I'll work my way up to the top, we have our data sources. I talked briefly about those. And then how do those data sources play with their platform? We're using ETL. And ETL is where we're logically combining data, right? So we grab data using ETL, we access it, that's the right word. We don't use ETL to copy a bunch of data. We use it there logically, do what we need to do, apply some logic there, and only persist what we need more often than not, calculations and results. Right now, we're using two ETL tools. So Amazon Glue is native to AWS. So why would you not use it, right? They make it easy. And then we're using Alteryx. Why Alteryx? Remember I said ASUEP uses ASU systems. Well, Alteryx is the ETL tool for ASU, right? That was a big leap for me because I'm a Microsoft ETL guy. I started about 20 years ago doing DTS. I know SSIS inside out, and I know Azure Data Factory, right? So that was a big leap for me. And I'm also Informatica and Data Stage certified, although that was 15 years ago. So it was, psychologically, it was hard at first, like, why Alteryx? But like I said, the platform's technology agnostic. And then at the top, we got the users of the middle layer. On the right, Amazon QuickSight is what we use to build our dashboards and our reports, right? So it's a very capable analytics and visualization platform. And then we have Amazon SageMaker, so our Aniket's team, right? So we've created that for them. And really at the end of the day, it's Jupyter Notebooks, right? Nothing fancy about it. Now, in order to manage and make sure everything works, we have Amazon CloudWatch at the top. And what CloudWatch does is it gives you a single place to basically manage your resources and your applications. Single view, it's very configurable. Analogies to that, on the security side, we have AWS Security Hub. Remember, keeping our data private, very important to us, right? And that again is a single view into all security incidents. Both of those let you alert, right? I'll get an email in the middle of the night or a text. And then within the security components, we have IAM, or Identity and Access Management component. We put very little as far as IAM in there. We leverage Aetna, which is the ASU identity management system, right? So by design, we wanted to keep that very light, only put there what AWS forces us to put there. And then we have something known as Secrets Manager. And that's where we store keys. So how do you interact with us? It's through the use of keys. So for example, Alteryx, that's a product outside of the Amazon ecology, right? But the way we do it is we have a key, and Alteryx uses a key basically to talk to the system. And then the key has certain things that it's allowed to do. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the system we built. And I'm going to say 80% of the companies have this template, right? If you Google, if you search, like, oh, wait a minute, did Jay just steal this diagram from another company? Most likely, yes. So that's it. I'm going to pivot now to Aniket, right? So, I talked about kind of what we were doing, the need, what we built, and Aniket's actually going to go through some use cases. So with that, Aniket, why don't you take over?
All right. So as you know, Jay said this was his favorite slide, so he ended there, right? And let's see, can I do it? And I'm starting with my favorite slide, which is this one. The thing is, okay, so Jay and Stephanie's team built us this wonderful platform that's all very good, but if we are not leveraging it to the full extent that we could, we are not, fulfilling our requirements and needs and the sort of the bane of our existence, basically. So what is it? So we start with our primary constituent, and our primary constituent, as Jay mentioned, is the ASU Outreach Hub. So their mission is to support the expanded outreach and transactional needs of ASU enterprise. And they concentrate on sort of three things: paid media, performance marketing, and alumni and donor engagement. So all activities for the ASU Outreach Hub is built around those. And we provide insights and sort of findings, analytics that help make key important decisions to support all of those areas, starting out primarily with our alumni and donor outreach. That's our currently main focus. However, the platform is built in such a way, and our analytical work is built in such a way that we can now get into paid media outreach as well as targeted corporate outreach. So all to support the outreach hub and see where we can make a difference, where we can add value. So again, the two guiding hub priorities are the existing marketing services and then the expanded marketing services. So the existing marketing services deal with this relationship marketing aspect of it. So we are trying to foster and build on the long-term relationship with our alumni and donors. And we have a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of analysis done on our alumni as well as donors, not necessarily alumni. And then the expanded services is getting into this transactional marketing. So creating these products and services. Now, we are in the higher ed space, so our products and services are geared towards higher education. So this transactional aspect where we are talking about this making a sale is actually a little bit different from selling a consumer product. So this is all higher ed focused. Okay. If you look at it in a slightly different way, we can lay down our priorities again in this form, starting with brand alignment. So our unit actually came out of the Enterprise Marketing Hub, which is now the Brand Strategy and Management Group. And so one of our key deliverables is supporting the ASU brand and then measuring the ASU brand and letting people know which things can be impacted so that the brand awareness and brand strength can be improved. So that was one of our original missions. On top of that, we have the relationship marketing aspect of it. So alumni affinity at scale. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of analysis done on our alumni. So we know a lot about our alumni, and we can still, we are getting more data, and we are sort of revamping and bringing into this activity of alumni affinity at scale. And of course, that leads into the ASU Foundation pipeline support. So with all the analysis that we've done, we can now do very sort of fine segmentation of the alumni data, and we can figure out, how are they segmented, which groups are sort of can react better to which kind of communications, product offerings, and so on. And then, of course, on top of that, we build propensity models, and so that we can kind of help the foundation make decisions about how do we create these engagement and affinity and giving journeys. And coming on top of that is the transactional marketing side, where we are able to then provide data for like learning enterprise, ASU online, as well as donor acquisition. So this is sort of looking at our priorities in a slightly different way, which is more a kind of actionable way. Okay, so what is the essential journey? So we have to do the first three things really well. We have to do the data discovery, we have to do the exploratory analysis, and we have to generate insights so that the fourth step, which is taking appropriate actions, can be done really well. So discovery is, okay, what data do we have? What additional data can we get externally? What primary research do we need to do to revamp what we already have? Then coming to the exploratory side, we are looking for trends over time. So we've been doing these primary research surveys since around 2014. So now we have good sort of critical mass of data that can tell us what are the trends over time. And then, of course, we can correlate marketing efforts with changes in perception. So which messaging or which ad campaigns work and how we can do more of those so that we can measure the perception. And of course, that's on the exploratory side. Once we've done that, then we go into the segmentation part of it. How do we group our constituents into segments that are meaningful and that can be used to target? And then, of course, the modeling part comes with the propensity to exhibit a behavior. So we do predictive models, statistical models to capture the propensity to exhibit a behavior. So the propensity to apply, propensity to enroll, propensity to give, things of that nature. And once we do these three things well, then of course that can be taken into consideration, designing marketing campaigns and improving audience targeting. Okay, again, reinforcing what data do we have and what do we do? Well, we know I have a lot of data on alumni. We know about degreed alumni as well as non-degreed. So the non-degreed are people who have started a program but did not finish. So we're trying to learn a lot more about them so that we can encourage them to do related things. We, of course, have student data. Again, as Jay mentioned, we're not copying anything. We're accessing the information. Then we have engagement information, event attendance, etc. And then, of course, donorship giving data. Okay, and then we sort of supplement everything with primary research, as well as procure third-party data from Epsilon and LexisNexis and so on. Okay, so that kind of enlarges our sort of the availability of data. And so I mentioned about surveys. We have various audiences that have surveyed over time. Alumni is our biggest audience. We also do surveys on current students, both campus immersion as well as digital. We survey prospective students, and of course, we survey parents of prospective students. Again, based on those surveys, we then try to build our alumni insight, measure perception, measure affinity, and of course, when we take it to the donor side, we look at donor behavior as well. So getting into a little more detail here, we have these multi-year survey data. So each survey is called a wave. So we have many waves that we have accumulated so far. And if you look at how we are using it, so these are used to gain understanding of what drives, interest in ASU, likelihood to recommend ASU, likelihood to apply and enroll, likelihood to donate. So all of these things, we get a preliminary sense through these surveys. And then, as I said, we have multiple waves of these surveys on various audiences. And all that data is now available on the marketing data analytics platform. And they are tractable by wave as well as audience. So all the data is housed there. This is our own data. So, and we can access it quite easily. Then one of the things that we do with that data is we build these causal models. They're called structural equation models, SEM for short. And what does an SEM do? It allows us to measure latent variables. So latent variables are variables that are not directly observable. So we try to measure that through a structural equation model. We quantify interaction, which is the correlation among the latent variables. And we also use it in a kind of a unique way to create labels for our affinity segments. I'll tell you in a minute how we are doing that. So all of these things come from the SEM models, which are built on the survey data. So here is an example of an alumni structural equation model. So here in a rectangular box, this is what is measured. So we can quantify this, we can measure this likely to recommend because we're asking questions. How likely are you to recommend? So we can measure and see what's the proportion. Everything else, all these ovals are actually latent variables. Actually, they are also combinations of latent variables. So this model is telling us that the likelihood to recommend an alumni likely to recommend ASU is strongly related to this concept of affinity. Again, that's a latent variable. Now, affinity is related to their perceptions of all of these things. Perceptions that how does ASU care for its students, ASU curricula that are measurement of excellence, how do students get involved, what are the channels, and things like that. So all these are collections of questions that allow us to measure these latent variables. And then I've not put the weights on these connections. Those are the correlations or the strengths. So essentially, we are looking at both the pathway and also the strength of each of these connections. And so there is like a regression model that is sitting behind this that gives us all those coefficients, which are essentially measuring the relative strength. Okay, so now I'm going to allude to the diagram that I had before. So, and on that label, you saw on that diagram, you saw we put labels like affinity and caring and excellence and all of that. So those also allow us to now create classification models. So we do our segmentation using these classification models. Normally, in machine learning terminology, a segmentation exercise, the clustering exercise, which is called unsupervised, where you don't have the labels. But we are using this in an interesting way to do clustering using supervised algorithm, because we know the labels. We know which respondents can be labeled as, they have interest in athletics or interest in social activities or interest in academics and things like that. So we create those labels, and then we build these 5 different machine learning models that run on AWS SageMaker through Jupyter Notebooks. And then we use those models. So the collection, the information comes from the surveys. We call that the ground truth. And we use that to the labels, and then we build the models, and then we finally score all the alumni, the entire alumni population using those models to figure out which particular alum belongs to which segment. And then on top of that, we also create a regression model, a statistical model to measure affinity. And that's also done through a machine learning algorithm. Now, as I mentioned, we've done a lot of work on analyzing these alumni affinity segments, so we understand quite a bit about how do these segments operate demographically and socially. And then that allows us to create targeted and customized communication. So here, when I say communicate, it's in italics. I'm trying to say, well, communication means not just reaching out to them via email, but providing them appropriate information that's relevant for them, that they're interested in, providing them opportunities to interact through activities, providing them opportunities to attend their sort of regional sort of alumni groups, et cetera, and then eventually priming them to donate or give. So all of that can be achieved through this particular process. Okay. One more thing about leveraging all the data. Here is kind of a sort of a snapshot of what kind of variables and features we use in our modeling. And so it's not just these, and we also have derived features from all of these. So we have data coming from student records, data coming from the graduate records report card survey, our alumni database that we have accumulated over time, and then, of course, third-party data through Epsilon. So Epsilon data provides us a person's lifestyle and other interests that we may not have captured in our database. So that's the external data. So taking all of these together, we do create our segments. So here's an example of the segments that we have created. Now, the naming convention, it's kind of historical. We are kind of getting away from these naming conventions because we are refining our segments. We are trying to create, more sort of nuanced segments. And so this is historically, we've kind of followed this structure. So going forward, these are going to change to some extent. So we now have these 5 segments, and we've also classified them by their affinity. So as you can see, low to high. Now, again, the names, initially when the names were created, they did have specific meanings. And you can see these are kind of the personas of each of those segments. So athletically involved will have, passion for athletics, will have a strong, allegiance to the broader ASU community and things like that. Socially involved will have these interactions they had when they were students, and they're kind of carrying that forward. Self-actualizers are more about, again, doing independent study, et cetera, when they were in school, and then how have they taken that forward. And then what we used to call lifelong learner is people who have expressed interest in, doing, like continuing their studies, their research, et cetera, and they're quite connected with their original departments and so on. And then anybody else we've not been classified, we have called them disconnected. Again, disconnected is kind of a misnomer. It doesn't mean that they're not connected, but this basically says that while they were students, they only concentrated on their academics because they either were commuter students or for whatever reason, they didn't have enough time to interact in other ways. But these distributions are actually, again, historical. It's changing. And in fact, we are noticing that this block is shrinking. So that means they're, given. So every time we rebuild the model, it's up at the end of the academic year. So we're getting fresh sample, fresh data, and that's showing us that this is shrinking a little bit. That means they're kind of now going to these other areas based on their past, engagements and, with what they're doing currently. So again, as I said, this is just an illustration of how our segments, fall into place, basically. Okay. That was all about alumni. As I said, we know a lot about alumni, but now we've also have done two things. Because we have a lot of information on alumni, we have a lot of information on alumni donors. That's our biggest block. But we have other donors that are not necessarily alumni, are not necessarily associated with ASU. We call them believers. They donate to us even though they're not associated. So we're now getting into creating this sort of the propensity to give models. Initially, it was all through the affinity segments and affinity scores because we were concentrating on alumni donors, but now we are starting to create models for non-alumni donors as well. So we're kind of expanding our scope. Okay, so in summary, what is it that we're doing? Well, we are consolidating all the data that's available to us, and then we're generating insights, we're creating segments, we are helping the Outreach Hub set up campaigns, we are helping them to test and learn certain actions. And then, of course, once something is put into place, institutionalized, we are tracking and monitoring. And all of this is being done through the MDAP. So that's where all these things come together. Just to point out, where are we trying to go? As I mentioned, since we know a lot about our degreed alumni, we are now concentrating also on the non-degreed alumni, and we're trying to create segments for them here, sort of certain things that are of interest to, like Dr. Crow saying that, okay, can we figure out which non-degreed alumni are close to finishing? How can we help them achieve their goals? Or, what stage are they in? What can we do for them? Things like that. And also, as I mentioned, the non-alumni donors, our believers group, we're working to, get insights with the data that we have. And then we just started looking at the parents' data. So anything that has data that's accessible to us, we're kind of diving deeper into. So that's essentially what we're doing with that wonderful platform that Stephanie and Jay's team has built for us.
Segments and models for the non-degree alumni?
No, we are in the process of doing that. Yes. So what we have is we have.
Non-degree alumni.
So these are people who have started a program but did not finish.
So they're not alumni.
Well, we treat them because they came to the door, they signed up for a program, however, and they got some credits, but they didn't finish. So we can label that.
It's not a made-up term by us, that's a term.
Yes, you
But so have you identified and I'm sorry, I got in here late, the latent factors that are associated?
We do not, at this moment, we do not sort of survey non-degree alumni separately. So we need to have, you need a specific
survey designed so that it can help us create the structural equivalent model. What we have now for the non-degree, we have all the information that ASU has about it, right? When they applied, what courses they took, when did they finish or when did they abandon the program? And then we also have epsilon data on them, like what their lifestyles and their demographics, their, income bracket, socioeconomic brackets and things like that. So we are trying to merge the two to see how can we do a proper segmentation without going through the SEM.
So you're only working with data that's within the ASU structure.
Ecosystem, yes.
So why can't you, can you go out and query other data to try to find where these people are living now?
Absolutely, and Aniket mentioned that's not data, that's a third party, right? So the platform can leverage any data source, leveraging any technology. So the short answer to your question, yes, we can.
Because this is a huge issue. There's 36 million people out there.
Yes.
That have started college, a lot of them have debt, they're really upset. And if we can do something to try to reach out to them, to get them
Yes.
to finish the reading that, turn down the country.
Yes, yes. Thank you for
I'm
that.
just curious, how far are you? Are you at the beginning?
No, so we did procure the third party epsilon data and we did some preliminary segmentation, but we need to spend more time than. And then at some point there's a need for that survey, getting data from the primary research. You're gonna find the ground truth and then more. Yes. Very good question. Yes, thank you.
No further questions. Thank you very much today for attending the participation. And this will be recorded.
And share. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.